Hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. If you can hear the dog breathing in the background, it's just what's going to happen today and in the normal voiceover recording. But I wanted to start off this video by saying thank you guys so much for the love and support on my last video, which was my 1 year upload anniversary and the sketchbook tour for Sketchbook 11. So the sketchbook will be starting in this video today. I will be doing just a casual little breaking in my new sketchbook video, so that's what you have to expect. And I will be trying a new art supply today. That's how I will be basically breaking in my sketchbook. I did do a couple of follower requests on the first pages just to get a feel for the paper. And then my actual first proper drawing is with these Arrtx acrylic markers. So this is kind of a mini review of these as somebody who works almost exclusively with paint pens and uses paint in a lot of their marker illustrations. So I'm either working with marker with paint or paint pens, right? So I will be using these today, which I don't really explain, and I will be breaking in my new sketchbook. So that's the actual agenda. However, I did actually have a different video planned for this week. However, I entered a delirious art moment, and I woke up the next morning and the thing I planned to make for today's video was basically done. I put on the last 6 or so episodes of Hellsing Ultimate and basically finished this entire painting self-portrait. So I did just want to kind of celebrate my first ever painting portrait on my channel, show you guys it, and I did like it more when it was just its midway stage before I really added the pastels to the face. I'm still deciding if I want to paint back over it and fix it, but this was what today's video was supposed to be on, so I did want to still bring it to the channel and take a moment to kind of say thank you guys for all your support and encouragement when it came to trying something completely new, like doing a full painting thing. I really appreciate just how supportive the YouTube community is, and particularly my community here on YouTube. So I just wanted to thank you guys and ask for opinions and critiques on it. And thoughts, since this is my first self-portrait in a hot minute. I also just wanted to put it up here, and once again thank you guys for everything you've done to make me a community and us a community where we get to just be supportive artists. And with that being said, I will now segue into the pre-recorded content and my voiceovers. So I'll see you guys on the flip side, alright? Bye-bye. Just segue. Editing Rain is just incapable of getting a break, right? So I forgot to say, if you draw along with me, I would love to hear about it in the comments. And also, I highly encourage you to be creative along with me, because I do believe that being a creative and creating things is a form of self-love. So incredibly dorky transition aside, I did a few pages at the front, the back of my swatch page, just to get a little bit more familiar with the paper, doing some follower requests on Instagram, just because it's really easy to accumulate those over there and get quick responses that are easy to organize. I didn't know who Hellboy was, still don't, but he's cute in my style, so that's a win for me, I guess. But all of this aside, I think that this paper is a little bit thinner than the Linktree 1917 sketchbook paper, which isn't bad, but it was something I needed to kind of feel out before I went in with a supply that I know is a little bit more wet, and just kind of trying to see how I might need to approach using this paper differently, right? Also, I hate the first 5 pages of a new sketchbook. I feel like generally the balance on the left side of the sketchbook just feels off, and I hate using them. They're the worst 5 pages for me, just because the odd angle that the sketchbook feels at, and then not having the other paper under it particularly thick. I just kind of wanted to breeze through them, get some stuff on there, nothing too serious, just some doodles to kind of move along and get to a paper where I was feeling a little bit more comfortable. I don't know if that makes sense, but first 5 and last 5 for me are just super uncomfortable. And this is on page 1 to 4, if you do front and back. So it was still not the best paper to be doing it on, but not a big deal, you know. So in terms of content, so Wanderer from Genshin is not my favorite character, but I really like his hat, his dorky hat, and his really stupid haircut. I tend to grow kind of a weird mullety kind of vibe in the back on my hair because of how curly it is, and it tends to kind of look like the back of his neck. So I kind of just have this running joke in my life every time I need a new haircut that I'm just looking like that one bad Genshin character. But I really like his design. It's simple enough that you can kind of be you. I can be kind of loose with it, not really care about the designs, but it has enough to it that I can do something, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but I just find that he's a very easy one to kind of whip out, and I wasn't quite in the mood or quite ready to go about maybe doing some OC work in my sketchbook. I just wasn't quite there yet. I'm still not there yet in terms of like my confidence in this new sketchbook. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like every new sketchbook I have a bit of a hesitation to me. Not necessarily art block and not necessarily like a blank page fear, but I feel better drawing fan art or cats, goofy little pen doodles where I don't really feel like I'm trying to create something wholly original and all of my creativity is dependent on it. I think that's one of my bigger sources of anxiety in art is this kind of self-illusion I've created that perhaps I'm not creative enough to be an artist. And so with that, I generally find that fan art is a great way to get a little bit more comfortable and break into a new sketchbook. So that's generally something I tend to do. I'll probably be doing fan art for the next couple of pages or just really passive casual doodles of some cute girls or maybe some practicing of men's facial expressions. I'm considering turning out another anatomy practice video because I feel like I haven't done anatomy practice in a hot minute, and it is something that I like to do pretty semi-regularly just to kind of keep up on things. So if you guys want to see that, definitely let me know. I definitely really like putting a lot of anatomy sketches in my sketchbook. It feels like a really fun place to kind of put those. And so with all that being said, let's get to talking about how awful this sketch is. So I'm using my, what is it? It's a Pilot Color Eno sketch mechanical pencil. And they're great as a colored mechanical pencil. They're cheap, not fancy or anything like that. But I generally don't like the dark blue. I feel like it's a little bit too hard to erase, but the light blue is so hard to see. And so I skipped a large portion of the sketching component of this video because I don't feel like you guys can really see super well what's happening on the paper. It's just wow, can that dog not snore when I'm recording audio? But the light blue, I just feel like you couldn't really see what was happening. And so I didn't really want you guys to feel like you were sketching along with somebody who is just scratching into some yellow toned paper, which is another thing I really like about the Talens Creative, and you'll get to see it more effectively later, but the different tonal component to the paper makes white show up really, really nicely, which is one thing that I really, really hate about paint pens in my old sketchbook, right? So that old sketchbook, it's nice. It's nice paper for the most part. It's not super good with water-based materials. Neither is this. They're not meant for not water-based materials. They're not great with wet materials. I can tell that already, only a couple pages in. Neither was my last one. They wrinkle, crinkle, do all of their paper shenanigans pretty quickly. They're not super durable, right? It's thin paper. It's a sketchbook that's not meant for watercolor. It's not a marker sketchbook either, so, it's not 100% excellent, right? Which is fine. And that's all good. So they're about even on that front. But one thing is that the white paper of my old sketchbook made it so that it was really, really difficult to... Monkey, come here. Okay, you can do that. That's cool. It made it really difficult to get a nice base paint layer down. And that was because the white really showed through and the paper didn't really grip or take the pen particularly well. So what would happen all of the time was that I would need to do 2, 3, 4 layers of my paint pens to actually get a solid coverage, which is really annoying. And you'd always have these white little splotches that are just not desirable. They're not nice. They don't look good. My brother's texting me. And with this paper, I found that the paint pen lays down so much smoother. And when there is that kind of yellow toned background, white stands out super nicely. You can lay down a white paint pen and actually see it and actually have results, which is so good for me and what I like to create as an artist. I really do love those white gel pen, bright, vibrant highlights, right? And so being able to use white in my art now, instead of having to say, okay, the paper is white, that is my white, gives me so much more creative freedom that I really find that I'm already enjoying in the sketchbook, and I've hardly used it. So I'm going to say very likely the Linktree, I can't even say that old sketchbook name. My old sketchbook might take marker a little bit better than this one. I haven't done marker art in it yet, but I'm predicting it based on this paper feeling a teeny bit thinner. However, I think that paint lays down on this so much better, and that marker will lay down on this so much better that it won't be a big deal. Another thing is that this sketchbook doesn't have as much marker bleed according to my swatch test, which I'm going to probably in 4-ish months when I'm halfway or most of the way through the sketchbook, which I'm estimating about 4 months based on how long my last one took. I am going to do a comparison video about these two sketchbooks just so that I can really explore how I feel about them, because I have multiple more Talens and the other one, right? I have multiple. I've been planning to use all of them. I'm going to go through every sketchbook I own one day, and I think they both have very different purposes and benefits as a sketchbook already. And so I'm going to make a proper analysis video where I go through the art that I created and seeing how it performs and comparing side by side and really seeing which of these I recommend for what. And so I'm really, really excited to produce that already because I'm having such a good time with the sketchbook and I'm feeling so creatively liberated, right? So with that being said, so I've mentioned a couple times on the last several videos, maybe the last month of videos, I have been doing a little bit to experiment and kind of try and hone my confidence with shapes and not relying on line art to define those shapes as much as I usually would. And part of that is so that I can have greater confidence in my actual creative process. Another part of it is because I think it's very easy to get how would I put it? Passive in your own art style. and passive in the way you approach creating art. And so forcing myself to create in a way that is abnormal for me, different, and a little bit anxious for me has been allowing me the opportunity to kind of hone my skills and make my art style even better and make me even more confident in my own art style. And so with paint pens and paint, I found that the best way for me to approach actually creating and coloring in and finishing a piece is to start with a pencil sketch and then go over in paint and approach the line art later, right? Use line art to define all of those lines that I want to be pure black, but try to rely on color as much as possible to get those distinguishing factors. And it also allows me to not think about all of those smaller characteristics that I like to include. So, like the circles on the cheeks that I really like, if I'm not doing it in black right away, I can paint right over it and not think about it and not care about it and add it later when I feel like it. It doesn't create a huge boundary for me because it's not in an ink that I don't want to cover and therefore would have to go back over and reline later. And that was another issue I was coming across a lot with painting and using paint pens more exclusively, moving from markers to using paint pens more. I was finding that I was getting frustrated because I would line my art, and then next thing I know, my art is my line art's gone because I'm not really 100% excellent at painting within the lines. I'm not horrible at it, but I tend to buddy up to the lines so much that it ends up toned, and then I have to redo my line art all over again. And so I'm genuinely benefiting from this process of using a colored pencil for my sketch and then going by basic shape to basic shape to kind of redefine my art after I've sketched it. And using this as my kind of method for processing information has also made me a lot more confident in my art style and a lot more confident in my ability to use color, which was something that I really wasn't expecting to ever really happen in my art. I've always been so anxious and hesitant when it comes to color, and I've always lacked so much confidence in my understanding of color theory and my perception of color, that I find that relying on color alone and not having those lines also aids me in using color to define what I want in a way that forces me to think about what would look good. And it's been really, really helpful. And I think that partially comes from the philosophy that I've always had, is that black is not a bad color, right? I've never agreed with, and I don't completely lack respect, but I do think that teachers are too one way or another when it comes to the philosophy of do not use black, right? I do not agree with it, fundamentally speaking. I think that black is an absolutely excellent tool. And personally, a lot of the art that I love, particularly the styles I love, are really dependent on heavy blacks, okay? I love art that is 2 or 3 tone art, and it's using that black to define almost everything, right? I love art like that. I love comics. I love manga, right? I love black in art. And so I've never been anti-black, right? I never have been, I never will be. And frankly, I'm kind of one of those people who believes understanding the rules is important, but almost never actually follows them. Actually intentionally, right? I've always known subconsciously that people don't like black, and that is a huge point of advice for beginner artists because I was a self-taught beginner artist and I was really looking for tips and tricks to improve. You know, that's what I was doing. I was teaching myself, so I was pursuing that education. So I encountered a lot of things saying don't use black. And when they would explain why, I was like, yeah, but all these other artists use black, so I'm not going to listen to you. And I understand that mixing black is not principally a good idea when it comes to color theory. I just don't give a shit. And so I've always used black without hesitation, and I have not had that be problematic in my life thus far. However, thinking about colors this way, I do use a lot of black, clearly. But using my colors first and then going in with my black line art later, I find is making me more confident in my usage of black. Because I go in after I've colored and I know where I want it to be its strongest, right? When I'm lining my the brims of my hats, it makes me more confident in my line width because I already incorporated the shading into the color, and so I know where putting that thicker black line is going to look even better than if I had just done my line art and thought about it. And digitally, this does not work for me. I cannot not have line art. I cannot not have line art. Yeah, that was right. I cannot not have line art when I'm working digitally. Okay, I need it, but also my digital art style is very different than my traditional art style. And so it's also completely dependent on how I work personally and how the individual works, right? Digitally, I need my line art, okay? It's never gonna work without it. And I say that now just because I have tried to do the no line art, and I don't like it digitally. I don't like it. It's not fun. I don't enjoy it. I don't like the process, right? I like this process, and that's why I'm trying to do it more, and I'm trying to use it to hone my creativity, right? And so there's also that fundamental difference, right? I've tried it, I don't like it. But it does create a lot of really dorky sketches, kind of like this one, because I am still very new to it, and I am not 100% accustomed to drawing this way. And it's been an additionally really fun thing to get to explore artistically, is kind of challenging my brain to think ahead of myself and figure out how I want to approach certain things. It's been really enjoyable, and I highly encourage this type of creative challenging if you ever feel up to it. It can be really frustrating, you know, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what anything looks like, I'm gonna die. But I've been finding it really fun, you know, and I find trying to push myself creatively to think differently than I usually would is really opened my mind to how to be better as an artist, not at art, but as an artist with a community of other artists that I really respect. You know, I respect everybody who creates art with their hands or their feet, or not AI actually creates the art themselves, right? And I have a lot of respect for real artists, right? And I think that the more I force myself to think about different art processes and different ways of thinking about art, I'm, one, becoming better as somebody who wants to be an art teacher one day, but two, it gives me so much more respect for those beginner artists where I look at their art and I'm like, I remember when my art looked like that. I was so ashamed of it back then. And when I look back at my old art and I'm embarrassed, or I'm like, wow, that's really bad, I think about all the other beginner artists and I think about their different process, their different way of approaching art, and I'm like, you know what? I could have never done what they're doing right now, and I probably still couldn't create art the way they're doing right now. And it makes me a lot nicer to my past self, which makes me nicer to other beginner artists, right? Because I think there's this kind of, I know it hurt my feelings a lot when I was a beginner artist, and all of these artists that I wildly loved and respected would be like, God, this is the worst thing I've ever created ever. It's so ugly. I hate it. And it's better than anything I'd ever created at that point. And I remember I would feel really embarrassed and ashamed of myself, and I'd be like, wow, they're saying this great piece of work that's better than anything I could ever make is ugly and hideous. And I think it's something to look up to. And I think that by pursuing different processes and then therefore creating quote unquote bad art, this is not bad art. I think this is a really good doodle sketch thing. Doodles take less than 15 minutes. This took me like 35 minutes. Maybe 40 if you count the sketching process. So this is
a well-refined sketch, right? Not a finished drawing, because my finished art takes like a couple hours, right? Somewhere in there. We don't need to think about it. But creating art that makes me feel vulnerable and feel like I'm not doing a good job reminds me that there are artists that haven't been drawing as long as me who feel the exact same way and are going to be here one day too. And they're going to be looking up to maybe this this drawing, the same way I look up to other people's drawings. And so feeling vulnerable reminds me that we're always going to be vulnerable, and that by kind of pursuing other attempts, it gives me more respect, I guess, is all I'm trying to say. And it makes me feel a little bit more content with my art, you know? It makes me more confident in creating art that I'm not necessarily over the moon about, right? It makes me feel good about every quote unquote bad sketch, right? And I think that's a very important thing to stay mindful about as an artist, right? And I think we need to be very careful about the way we talk about our old art. And I'm really working hard to be good about this. It's hard at times because I've grown so much. But I think we need to be mindful about how we talk about our old art, because there are people who look up to our old art or haven't been drawing as long as we have and are at the same stage as our old art. And I don't feel like it's fair to say that someone's progress is bad, right? And by saying my old art is bad, I'm also saying that someone's art that is trying to be, that is their best at that point in their life, is also bad. And that's not fair, because I feel like every art is good art for the person who's creating it, because they're trying their hardest. And you know, sometimes we could see really bad proportions and chuckle about it and think it's goofy, but I don't think we can, it's horrible to be mean to a beginner artist in a place where anyone can be hurt about it, right? And so I'm trying to, get really, really, really good at not doing that anywhere, or talking about my old art. But I also try to be more vulnerable and free with my art, and not have any shame about creating art I'm not particularly proud of on the internet. Because, this is a throwaway sketch at the end of the day. I'm not proud of it, but it's fine. I'm not proud of it, though. It's not my best work. It's nothing like some of the art that I've put on my channel before, my finished pieces, you know? And so, I was originally really anxious about posting this because I didn't feel like it was good enough. But then I sat about it. I was like, but this is my art. And then I realized and remembered that I had a lot of fun making it. And it doesn't really matter if it's my best work if I had a good time, right? And that's how I feel about all other artists. So why can't I feel that way about myself, right? I feel like this artist imposter syndrome thing that we have going on, we as a community, me as an individual, I shouldn't put that upon you all, even though it's a common experience for many of us. I feel like this artist imposter syndrome is only going to get worse if we don't talk about our feelings, and if I don't force myself to confront that feeling on the internet in the space where I kind of learned that imposter syndrome from, right? Because people post their best work on the internet and not all of their bad work, or quote unquote, or their lazy work or their off days. And so I'm trying really hard to tell myself in this video, and by sitting here and just chatting about it, that all art's good art. The art you make on your worst day is still good art because it was you progressing towards something, right? And so there's that. Food for thought. I'd love to know your guys' opinions on the matter if you feel comfortable commenting about it. And then really quickly, I do need to use these kind of artist paint pens more to generally decide all of my feelings on the matter, how I'm overall kind of leaning with them, and how I want to synthesize my thoughts. But initially, right out the gate, I'm completely infatuated with them. I don't believe in favorites particularly, like having a singular favorite, because I don't have singular favorites. This is in my top 3 art supplies right now, though. I don't feel like I could say it's in my favorite of paint pens. I don't have the heart to say I have a favorite. I'm too soft to do that. And I really like the other colors that other paint brands have that this one doesn't. So in terms of like usability, comfortableness while working, the learning curve to it, I'd say this is some of the best paint pens I've ever used. And I say they're the most beginner friendly that I've ever used, right? I feel like these are really up there in creating a really good first time user experience, right? I feel like with Poscas, there can be a lot of frustration when using them at first if they're pilling your paper, which they tore this paper up even just in the swatch test more than these did for a whole drawing. So I think they think they create excellent beginner user experience, right? Not as a beginner artist, but like your first time using them. But I've also only used them this one time, so I have to do quite a few more pages before I really kind of see where I land. These might be the best paint pens I've ever used, though. And I think I'm going to stick with it, and I think I'm going to probably start just buying these as much as possible as opposed to Poscas whenever I can. Poscas have a lot of thinner nib stuff going on, which is highly beneficial for my art style because I do a lot of random lines, quote unquote random lines. I'm supposed to pretend I have a plan, right? Like I'm an artist, so I thought it through. It totally didn't just do it on a whim, right? But I do random lines. I do really fine details. I like to do those circles all over my art and stuff like that. And so the fine tips of the super extra fine Poscas is highly beneficial. The fine tip on the back of the black version of the Arrtx are not quite thin enough for me and my use case, which isn't bad, but I'm like, you know? And then I do use what are they called? The T5 paint pens. They're very glossy, definitely reactivate each other quite a lot, but they have a lot of really nice colors that I don't have in this Arrtx set. And it has a wider breadth of depth to them. Although I have the 30 and the like 15 set, 24 set. So 30 and 24, I think they have a 60 and 60 set for their colors, so that might just be a my set issue. But if I'm definitely have more of the pastel bright colors, so that's also something I need to look into a bit more just to figure out where I'm going with it. These aren't very glossy. I'm in love. I'm so glad these became popular on YouTube Reels because I'm infatuated with them. They're definitely in the art supply list of art supplies I'm going to be using a whole lot more in life, right? Like these, my Ohuhu markers and my goofy little line art thingies, they're my top things. Like these are go-tos forever now. I love these, seriously. So I hope that's a good review. I'll give a more thorough one and in the distant future, distant as in probably within the next month, you know, we gotta see where my art lines up. If you guys want to see me swatch these, let me know. I did record me swatching them. They are, of course, not in this video, but I could put it in a more proper synthesized review if you guys are interested. But I'm hoping to do a video where I go through all of the art I make with these over the course of about a month and talk about my feelings, compare them to Posca and the T5s, and just give a nice thorough analysis, right? That's what I'm hoping to do. So let me know if you're interested, because of course, yeah, use cases are fun and comparing them is fun, but it's more fun when people want to see it and are curious. So, and let me know what you guys think about these and if you have tips or tricks for using them that you guys have been particularly fond of. With that being said, this is my sketch drawing thingy of Wanderer from Genshin Impact. I named my Wanderer Arrtx, by the way, in case any of you cared. I haven't played Genshin in like a month, so do it that way you will. I just mostly play it for the character collection and the character designs. So not a huge fan. I don't do much with him. So I made him a pastel baby, even though that's probably out of character as hell, but that's okay. And so that being said, thank you so much for sitting all the way through this video. I really appreciate it. And I really would like to hear from you guys in the comments about any and everything you thought about over the course of this video. What did you draw whilst watching me and all of that fun jazz? So with that being said, like if you like, dislike if you dislike, subscribe if you would like to see more of my content, and I hope to see you in my next video. So have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are. And with that being said, bye-bye.